What about this next game, Atlanta versus Miami? I'll start out with that one. Yeah, if you can find a controller to switch the channel, I suggest doing that. Welcome to
Beyond
Sports
Sports
with Paul and Jeremy. I'm Paul.
I'm Jeremy.
We look at sports from all angles.
What's really going on?
Beyond Sports. All right, so welcome to Beyond Sports with Paul and Jeremy. I'm Paul.
I'm Jeremy.
All right, and thank you guys for checking us out this week. So we had a pretty cool week last week of football, and we're actually into week 7, right? Wow, it's pretty quick, man. It seems like the season's going by super fast, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with where it's at so far, but we still have 10 weeks left, or 11 weeks left, I guess, worth of games. So that's still a lot of time, I guess, right? So what we're going to talk about today is, starting out, we're going to look at all the games from last week, just quickly talking about the ones that we didn't have as game of the week, and then also going into the games of the week a little bit more. Then we'll get to the games for this week, talk about our specific games of the week, and then go over the scores that we predict, the games that we predict for the rest. So, Jeremy, let's see. Starting out, how were the games of the week? How were the games last week? What game were we starting out with, by the way?
We can start with the Thursday night game. So 1 week ago today, we had the Thursday night game. The Buccaneers played the Eagles, and we thought it was going to be a rout, but the Buccaneers and Eagles thought otherwise, and the Buccaneers ended up winning. Man. Say what?
I didn't think it was going to be a rout.
All right. Well, we thought it was going to be decisive. It wasn't as decisive as we thought it was going to be. The Buccaneers ended up winning 28-22, and it really was pretty close at the end, but the Buccaneers decided they didn't want to score at the very end, so they just wanted to win by 6. And we both predicted that Tampa Bay would win, so we both got that game correct. In London, a game that I totally forgot about until halftime, and then I had a whole cable outage fiasco, so I couldn't even watch it. But the Jaguars got their first win of the year, winning 23-20.
Congrats to the Jags.
On a field goal. Yeah. And, when this game happened, I was like, I'm really disappointed in this game because Jacksonville has a win and Detroit doesn't. And that actually really got to me. It made me kind of mad because I think Detroit is a lot more like feisty of a team, a lot more hardworking of a team, yet they still don't have a win. But Jaguars got a win. You called the Jaguars win on that one. I thought Miami would win, so you got that game correct.
Yeah, just one quick thing about that game.
Yep.
I thought that Miami really won that game for the Jags. The coaching was really bad. A lot of the decisions were really bad on Miami's end, and I think that kind of showcased some of their issues this season. They don't really use their running backs well. They do pass play after pass play after pass play. They went for it on times when they shouldn't have went for it, and I think that that's because they were overconfident. They thought that, hey, we're going to beat the Jags, and it didn't happen. So Miami needs to get better. The coaching needs to get better, especially for them to go further this season. I think they've only won, one game maybe? So yeah. So they really need to stop overvaluing how good they are until they can prove that they can win multiple games this season and at least get over 500.
Yeah, that's the funny part, because for them to be overconfident, having only one win, just because they're playing a team with no wins, doesn't make much sense, right? And
yeah,
that's what happens when you get too confident.
Yeah, for sure. It's pretty wild. So, crazy game, man. But congrats to the Jacksonville for getting their first win. What about the next game, Jeremy?
We had the Packers beating the Bears 24-14, and this was Aaron Rodgers supposedly said that he owns the Bears, which hey, it's not untrue. So I didn't see much of that game. I didn't see any of it. So did you see any of it? Can you talk about it a little bit?
From the most part that I saw, I think the Bears were a little bit closer initially. Their running game was still looking pretty good. They just couldn't stop the Packers in the long part of the game. But Justin Fields, he's coming along. I think that he should be the quarterback starting up there, continuing. But again, the Packers, I had them going to the Super Bowl, so I'm not surprised with what they did. They're 5-1 right now, and the pick's still looking pretty good for me. So
We will see, won't we? After
hopefully,
that,
COVID help.
say again.
I said, COVID willing, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see how that goes. The Rams beat the Giants 38-11. You know, it's the Giants, it's the Rams.
Yeah.
Oh, in the last game, we both predicted Green Bay to win, so we both were correct on that pick. But yeah, the Rams beat the Giants because the Rams are the Rams and the Giants are the Giants. So we both predicted that the Rams would win. That wasn't a surprise to us either.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty much whatever it was. So
the Chiefs went to Washington and won 31-13. You know, in the little group chat that we got, a lot of people seem to be disappointed in Kansas City, but they ended up winning by 18. So it didn't look in the final score as bad as people seemed to think it was during the game. And we both predicted that the Chiefs would win that game as well.
Yeah, and like I said, I think the Chiefs, they just need to show a little bit more consistency. Even looking at that Washington team, right? We thought the Washington defense would be fairly solid this year, but they haven't really shown that so far this season. And I think that that's one of the things to keep in mind, especially with this game. Kansas City, they have some tough competition if they're going to try to win the championship. So I think that the biggest thing for them is they need to start building their team together and making sure that they can put together convincing wins and show that they belong in the top part of the NFL in the AFC this season. So.
And we both predicted that Chiefs would win if I didn't say that before.
Correct.
The next game we have here, the Vikings beat the Panthers in overtime. I listened to this game as I was driving. I was traveling on Sunday, so I didn't get to watch like any game, but I saw this game as I was listening to this game as I was driving. And yeah, it was a little disappointing coming from the perspective of a Panthers fan. Well, you know, I'm not going to say I'm a huge Panthers fan, but I was rooting for the Panthers. And it was disappointing because pretty much it seemed like the Vikings could do whatever they wanted on offense. And they just drove right down during overtime like it wasn't nothing really, as far as I heard, and won with a touchdown. There was very little resistance. At the end of that game, there was a lot of offense anyway, but the Vikings had the ball first, and they did what they were supposed to do and scored a touchdown, so there was no contest after that. So game over, and let's see, we both picked Minnesota to win that game.
Yeah, sounds good so far. And the next game, what do we have for the next game?
Raiders and the Broncos. This was a surprising game. The Raiders win 34-24. So the Raiders, again, under an interim coach, Bisaccia, I believe is his name. I think is it Rich? So they ended up winning. So is this a new team now? Is the Raiders team looking poised to overcome whatever demons that they have based on the legacy of John Gruden? Can they do better without him? Can they do bad all by themselves? So maybe they can. And they had a nice win here at the Broncos, 34-24. We both picked the Broncos to win that game. So that was a surprise to both of us. I really thought that there would be a letdown and maybe there would be a lot of emotions in the locker room. A lot of people had to take some time and try to process what happened with John Gruden, but on the field, it didn't seem to affect them. Either that or the Broncos are just that bad. So we'll see in the upcoming weeks which of those is true.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things with that game when I was thinking about it, I was like, I don't think the Raiders are that good. And I think I gave the Broncos the benefit of the doubt. You know what I mean? Like I was like, all right, Broncos have had some strong showings. Like their defense is cool. They have their wide receivers. Bridgewater's kind of solid, you know. And I didn't think that the Raiders were going to have enough consistency to win that game. You know, Raiders have a tradition of penalties or making bad plays, you know, and I thought that might eat them up, but they did a really good job. So congrats to the Raiders on winning that game. And we'll see what they do for the rest of the season. You know, I know some of those players still like John Gruden, so maybe they were playing for him. Derek Carr.
Okay. Yeah, maybe they were. We had the Cowboys beating the Patriots in overtime. This is another one of those games that somehow was closer than we thought it was going to be. I didn't think it was going to be close, considering a lot of people think that the Cowboys are the best team in the NFC. We might differ on that. I don't really agree with it, but we know that the Patriots aren't anywhere close to that level as a team. but it was a close game. The Cowboys ended up winning on a touchdown drive in overtime. I think that they force a punt and then score after that in overtime.
Yeah, there was some type of weird situation I thought that happened with New England. Um, but yeah, they end up forcing a punt or getting some turnover, and then they were able to get down on a long play to get positioned to win that game. So yeah.
Yeah, I did see a little bit of this game because so when I did travel, I went and I met up with my brother. He's in this axe throwing league on Sunday nights, and there was a guy there that was watching the game on his phone, and so we got to talking about the game, and he was showing us and keeping us updated on the game. There were some questionable decisions by Mike McCarthy in that game.
Mm.
I think it was like 4th and 1, and they were somewhere near midfield, and they decided to kick a long field goal and missed it. Maybe I don't know. Something happened where on one fourth down that was a short yardage fourth down, they decided to kick a field goal or punt, and then on another fourth down they went for it when it was longer than 1 yard. Just weird decisions like that made no sense.
Yeah.
But in spite of the bad decisions, the Cowboys ended up winning. So it worked out for them. But you got to look at that in the future and wonder, will that decision making cost them in the future as well? And I picked Dallas to win that game. You picked New England to win that game. So I guess with as close as it was, we were both almost right.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that this was one where I think I remember in the video from last week, I was kind of like, sometimes the Cowboys, they just don't show up, and I feel like this game might be a little bit closer than what we think. And I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and go with New England. And they almost pulled up the upset. So shout out to New England for putting together a good game. Shout out to the Cowboys for being the Cowboys, keeping their fans' hopes up before they destroy them later on this season. So enjoy while you can, Cowboys fans, because this is going to be short-lived. That's pretty much it.
The Cowboys are dangerously close to going over 500. They're already 5-1. This is not good. How are they going to throw this now? How are they going to end up being 8-9 this year? That's the question. Because they've gotten way too many wins too fast for them to sustain their normal level of output. So I'm worried that it's going to be a huge collapse rather than a gradual collapse like they normally do, which I think everyone would be way more comfortable with.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like one of the people that I think is maybe the MVP for the Cowboys, and maybe not the MVP, but one that's like really pushing them forward is CeeDee Lamb, man. Like his second year, he is he's dominating. Like you think about some of the really good wide receivers that have came out before, like Julio Jones, AJ Green, how they just dominated, especially early on in their career. This is what CeeDee Lamb is doing. So shout out to CeeDee Lamb with what he's doing. The Cowboys got lucky with picking him. Sometimes I feel like they might not even go with him when the draft was there, but good job for them picking him. It definitely helped them out this season. So
you remember leading up to the draft, Jerry Jones was like, "I passed on Randy Moss, and I'm not going to pass on CeeDee Lamb." Remember him?
Oh, that's what it was.
Thing. He was like he regretted passing on Randy Moss back when Randy Moss came out, so he wasn't going to pass up on CeeDee Lamb. And yeah, CeeDee Lamb is looking like he's in college again. When he was in college, I remember that he just used to just make people look silly. Like yards after the catch, it was ridiculous how many yards after the catch the guy got, and he's starting to make NFL players look silly too.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy back then because I remember when he was on, what was it, Oklahoma, right?
Yeah,
he was there, and they this is when Oklahoma was not that good necessarily, right? And he was one of the only guys. Well, I mean, they were good, but they weren't top level Oklahoma that season. And I think that he was one of the guys that they could go to, right? He's the only guy that could compete against some of these other teams. I can't remember if they were playing against LSU or something, but LSU had a bunch of wide receivers, and they're like, well, we know that it's just going to go to CeeDee Lamb every time. And he still was making plays, So CeeDee Lamb, shout out to him. Shout out to my fantasy team that has him. Even if we lose, he's making us look good sometimes. All right.
All right. And let's see. Game, we had the Sunday night game after that. Sunday night game, Seahawks and the Steelers. The Steelers ended up winning 23-20. That game was very close too until a costly fumble from Geno Smith at the end of the game, and the Steelers got it and kicked the field goal and won the game. So I didn't see this one either. I thought I had this one, but I canceled my little Peacock Premium like the day before. Who knew? Who knew I needed that to watch Sunday Night Football online? So I didn't get to watch this. I had to watch the updates, which is like a little less exciting. But it was a close game, And I think Geno Smith was trying to fumble and trying to turn the ball over the last couple series, and he succeeded at the end. Steelers ended up winning. So another close game by two teams who aren't really good right now. The Seahawks aren't good because they lost Russell Wilson, and the Steelers just I don't know what's going on with the Steelers. They have an old quarterback. They're just trying to get through this year, and they're trying to stay at 8-8, 8-9 this year, I think.
Yeah. In that game, like I said, I think we both thought it might be close. It could go either way. I went with the Seahawks in that one. Jeremy went with the Steelers. And again, another one of those close games. And that's what we've been seeing a lot of this year. I feel like there's been more close games this year than I remember in the last couple of years. Like I feel like every single game this year, well, not every single, but every week has just a bunch of games that are just very close and being decided by overtime or the last couple of minutes of the game. So very interesting NFL season, I think, to this point.
It would seem so. But every game has a plus or minus three score line, so everybody thinks the games are going to be close anyway. And we've gone over all the games except for our four games of the week, so we can go and pay a little closer attention to the games of the week. If you like, our first game of the week was the Bengals at the Lions, and we wanted to spotlight this game because we thought it might be a little special because of Joe Burrow's voice rest, and maybe the team wouldn't be as fluid if their quarterback wasn't talking during the week, but it didn't appear so. The Bengals won 34-11 and continued to make the Lions look like a winless team. Even though they fight hard, they just can't get over the hump right now. And so 34-11, we both had the Bengals winning that one. So what are your thoughts on that first game of the week, Paul?
I still think Detroit's being Detroit, like not being able to win some of those games. But like Jeremy said, like you have to hope for a team, right? Like I think that's Jeremy's hope team and they used to be my hope team as well. Like I used to love the Lions, and then I think I was just like, this is not going anywhere. And yeah. So but outside of that, like I said, the Bengals did a really good job of in that game in general. So I think that now they're 4-2, right? 4-2. All right. So they're still having a very solid record this season. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I'm happy that Joe Burrow is having a lot more success this season compared to last, especially with that injury and coming back in such high hopes of for him last season. So,
and our next game of the week was not close as well, and this was even bigger of a rout. Congratulations to Paul. The Colts beat the Texans 31-3. The Colts are still in the cellar in their division, but they're looking a little bit better now. So, what do you think about the Colts' victory over the Texans?
Good win, man. They had a lot more consistency. They still had some turnovers, still had some small issues, but the Texans haven't been that strong. And the Colts have a fairly strong defense. They made a lot of plays on defense, especially in the backfield. So, hey, shout out to the Colts and what they did in getting that much needed win from a division. I don't know if I want to say rival all the way at this point, but another division team. So
yeah, and we both predicted that Indy would win, and they did in resounding form. So our next game of the week, we had Chargers and the Ravens. This game pitted two of the best teams in the AFC, and the result wasn't even close. Chargers and the Ravens. Chargers ended up winning 34-6 at home. Paul, do you have any thoughts on this game?
Outside of the Ravens just bodying the Chargers, man, that was pretty wild. Just to see the score, like I don't know. Did you get to see that game all the way? By the way,
I watched some highlights. I didn't get to see it though.
Okay. Yeah. See, for me, I wasn't necessarily sure exactly what happened, and I didn't get to see too much of it. But I think one of the interesting things was the conversations that we were having was about the two quarterbacks and how they were going to perform. Was Lamar going to show that he could do something against a good competition? Could Herbert still put up those numbers? One thing that we saw, Herbert did not necessarily put up those numbers, right? He was hovering closer to around 50%, almost 200 yards. But again, there was issues with that team, and they just couldn't overcome those. If you looked at Lamar Jackson, right, he played a little bit better, less yardage, more interceptions that he threw. So again, like neither quarterback really shined in the big picture, but with keeping the drives going on the ground, Lamar Jackson did a fairly solid job with that. Their team had a really good rushing day with 187 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. So hey, shout out to the the Ravens for getting that win. They showed that they are able to compete against top level teams. So let's see what happens for the rest of the season.
Yeah, from what I gathered, there was a lot of pressure that the Ravens brought to the Chargers defensively. And it seemed like they were constantly getting after the quarterback, constantly keeping Herbert uncomfortable. And I think that worked. So is that going to be what other teams use in the future? Maybe so, but who knows if other teams are capable of doing what the Ravens did. And again, the Ravens are a team that, based on their injuries, didn't seem like they would be competitive this year at all. Yeah, they're 5-1, they're 3-0 at home. They seem to be a great team, and the Ravens keep getting running backs. Like they had running back issues, right, with their injuries. They just keep getting formerly good running backs. So Devontae Freeman, they got Latavius Murray, Le'Veon Bell. Like a lot of guys who have been good in the past are now showing up on this Ravens team. And now that it seems like they aren't going to miss a beat because they have experienced running backs who know what to do with the ball. So what used to be what it seemed like a weakness, I don't think is a weakness anymore at the very least. So they've shored up that and they enjoy passing the ball a lot more now. So the Ravens, they proved what they had to prove this week. And let's look for them to be even better in the future.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I think that they were like, you know what? If we get all these old running backs that were kind of good at one point in time that had different types of issues, one of them will come through, right? Like Devontae Freeman had that whole issue with what Atlanta was where it first started.
Yeah.
And then Murray, right, with Cowboys and all that other stuff, and he just never really found that consistency. So coming back, and hey,
he was with the Raiders, and then with New Orleans.
Wait, am I thinking about? Oh, my bad. I'm thinking about
DeMarco.
Yeah, I was switching up Murray's.
He was also with Minnesota, so Latavius has been around.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, Cowboys is like then Raiders. It's like wait, I'm tripping now. So, but yeah, he's another one of those guys that I think when he was with the Raiders, there was an issue where they liked him. He did pretty good, and is that when they invested in? It wasn't just Josh Jacobs. There was another running back I think that kind of pushed him out.
There's a Booker.
No, I can't remember. I remember they had Jalen Richards, I think, too, and then somebody else. But they just couldn't. They didn't end up keeping him there because he had those injury issues. So I think that overall the Ravens, like I said, if they can keep it up, if they can win these games in Raven style, then hey, shout out to them. Get that first round bye, continue figuring out those small issues, and then they'll be pretty solid. So good job to their.
Yeah, we both thought the Chargers were going to win that game, so we both missed out on that one, but I'm okay with that because, if I had to root for a team, I'd root for the Ravens. I'm not a Ravens fan. Like I said, I won't claim that. There are a lot of people who are diehard fans of the Ravens. I just like the Ravens. I support them.
Yeah, you got a supporter in Jeremy. Sounds good.
Yeah. Our final game of the week was the Cardinals at the Browns, a game that looked like it could be close. It depends, but we'd seen that the Browns defense was capable of giving up a lot of points, and that's what happened. Cardinals ended up winning 37-14. So it wasn't really close. And what do we make of the Cardinals now? The Cardinals have been beating a lot of good teams. They're undefeated, the only undefeated team in the NFL. What do we make of the Cardinals right now?
I think the Cardinals, again, like I said, I think they're going to be a solid team throughout. I think I had them going fairly far with our initial predictions. So I think that's the big thing with the Cardinals. Murray coming back and actually having a little bit more composure, I guess, with his or in the backfield at the quarterback position, and then also getting it to the wide receivers. He has a lot more options that are available now, and I think that's just going to be one of the things that helps them out with making sure that they can continue to keep drives going. They had an issue with that the week before last, so I'm glad that they were able to get that back against the Cleveland defense, right? And I think one of the things Cleveland was not able to get to the quarterback, and I think that played a factor in why they weren't able to win that game.
Yeah, and tonight Cleveland has a lot of players out. Their 2-star running backs are out tonight on Thursday Night Football. Baker Mayfield's
Ooh.
out. Cleveland's kind of packing it in on a short week. So if we talk about that game, that's going to be probably a really quick discussion. But that's one of the games we have to talk about later on Thursday Night Football. And our final records for this week,
Oh, we had one more game.
I
We
ended
didn't
up.
talk about Buffalo, Tennessee.
Oh, we didn't. Oh, sorry. I skipped over that. That wasn't one of our games of the week. That was just the Monday Night Football game that I totally glossed over. Monday Night Football, Buffalo came into it 4-1, one of the hottest teams, favorite in the AFC. They lose to the Tennessee Titans 34-31. I know this one hurts Paul because the Colts finally get a win, and I also was hoping they could make up some ground on Tennessee, and Tennessee ended up winning. What did you notice in that game?
Honestly, that game was interesting. On both sides, both teams did a fairly solid job. I think the biggest thing that happened with the Buffalo Bills was that they got a little bit more pressure on, or they had a little bit more pressure on them. And then at the end of the game, did you see the end of the game? By the way, for that one?
Yeah, I didn't understand the whole game. I don't know how it happened, the whole thing.
Yeah, that whole little last thing where Buffalo was overly cocky, right? It's the same thing that we
Mhm.
saw in that Miami Jacksonville game, right? They were overly cocky and they thought that they would just be able to get what they needed. And I think the play that was ran was kind of a rush bad play when they went for it on 4th and 1 when they could have made the field goal. And Josh Allen like was shotgun, went up to the line, wasn't really set all the way, got the ball, his foot slipped, and then he hit somebody and he was down. And that was the end. And that's how they ended up the game. And like Josh Allen is a good quarterback that is able to pass on the run. He's able to move around in the pocket. He's able to escape guys. So I don't understand why they would have went with that quarterback sneak or that type of quarterback sneak at that point. Either you're going to have him right up on the line of scrimmage and you're going to basically make sure that it's known, or you're going to do something in a shotgun and leave more options. And maybe there's a lane that he can get through, but overall, Buffalo made a bad decision. If anything, I would have, I don't know. They either did a different play or went for it, but Buffalo's pretty solid. I think that they'll still make it to the playoffs. I think they're still the team to be looked at in the AFC. So we'll see what happens to them throughout the rest of the season. But I think they'll be fine, and they just got a little bit too cocky. So now they know.
Yeah, well, my questions are on defense. Like, how did they give up so many points? The Tennessee Titans are a one-dimensional football team, really. And the thing that they do is a thing that no other team does the same way. Baltimore might be the most effective running team in the NFL, but they get running from their quarterback and from their running backs, which keeps teams off balance. So they don't know where the run's coming from. Tennessee has one guy that you have to stop, and people still aren't stopping him. And Henry is just so impressive, 143 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Bills. They somehow managed to come back and take control of the second half, even though they weren't really doing much through the air. And on the other side, Buffalo will not run the ball. The thing about the Buffalo offense that makes them so effective is Josh Allen's arm is so strong. He can make any throw from anywhere, and they put so much pressure on the defense because they're going deep. If you see him get out of the pocket, he just flicks the ball 50 yards downfield, right? It's
Yeah.
just so crazy to see him throw the ball from weird angles and get the ball so far and past the defense. And his wide receivers are always trying to get behind the defense. So I think there's a lot of pressure they put on the defense based on his arm and the things that he can do that are unique to him, really. Like no one else is doing the things he does, especially throwing the football.
Yeah, for sure.
So based on what he does, he makes it so hard on the defense, right? So the question is, why aren't they dominating more? And maybe they just needed to run the ball and try to slow the tempo down. I still don't understand how Tennessee got back in that game because Buffalo was clearly the better team. So Buffalo needs to get that figured out and learn how to take control of the game and control the time. Maybe not always go for it. Maybe not always be so wide open on offense, and maybe slow it down a little bit. And if you're always scoring
Yeah.
so fast, maybe your defense is getting tired. However it works, they had a problem against a team that I think that they should have beaten.
Yeah, I think that's one of the points that I noticed as well. I thought when they were up at halftime, I thought that they were going to go ahead and run the ball a little bit more, which was exciting to me because I had Zach Moss and
Mm.
Yeah, they didn't run the ball with him. I was like, okay, well, maybe they do with Devin Singletary. Not too much either. Their leading rusher attempts wise in that game was Josh Allen. Josh Allen had 9 carries. Zach Moss had 8. And they both had basically around the same amount of yards, which is interesting. And Josh Allen definitely, like we talked about before, he has that ability to run and get extra yardage. And I think that that's one of those things that really stands out when you're talking about a quarterback. And it's weird. Like you look at the numbers for Josh Allen, and they still look really amazing. He only missed 12 passes. He was 35 for 47, 353 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 7.5 yard average. You know what I mean? He only took 3 sacks that whole game, but those sacks must have been very meaningful, because yeah, his rating was 108. Like he did a really good job. But when you're talking about Derrick Henry on the other side of the ball, and understanding that they're running running the ball, and then also your quarterback has some ability to get to some of these wide receivers, and I think that that's the other thing with Tennessee is that their wide receivers, even if their quarterback's not necessarily the top quarterback, even if their running back is amazing, their wide receivers can make plays, right? AJ Brown, Julio Jones, these guys can both go up and get the ball when you need it. And I think that that's one of the things that kind of helps them out overall with keeping those drives going. So shout out to Tennessee for getting that win. They added a little bit more separation between them and the Colts with the final record, right? But hey, we'll see what happens with this week coming up. So
Yeah, and talking about Derrick Henry, he's now on pace for 2,200 yards, I think. And again, this was something we talked about, the extra game, maybe some records can go down. He's on pace to break the all-time single-season rushing record. It's going to be in more games than before. It's going to be fewer yards per game than have been done before, but it's still something worth noting, and he's still not going to win the MVP even if he does it. So I think the record for most yards per game is the O.J. Simpson year, where he rushed for 2,000 yards in 14 games. And so I think, that's not going to go down, but that was 143 yards per game, I think. So
yeah.
it would be great to see Derrick Henry rush for 2,200 yards. I think that'd be great, just so we can have something to excite us while also keeping us justifiably angry that he won't get much more love than what he gets. So that was all of our games for last week. I ended up going 10-4 in those 14 games. You ended up going 9-5. So I think we're tied on the year now in terms of overall win-loss record. We had 4 teams that were on bye: the Falcons, Saints, Jets, and 49ers. So this week we have 6 teams on bye, and we can go through and talk about some of those games if you like. But you let me know. You're running the show.
Yeah, I was gonna say that one thing that was really interesting. Those last 3 games, New England, Dallas, Seattle, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, and Tennessee, they were all decided by very close scores, right? Either overtime or something, and that's really interesting. Germany was like about almost 2 big games away from having a really solid week, and I think that Buffalo win could have been really nice if he would have got that Miami one. 12-2 would have been really solid, and this is why the NFL is very interesting this season. Like I said, games are being decided fairly close. There's always close spreads in games, and people blow other teams out. You know what I mean? But just to have those spreads close and those actually happen is very interesting, especially with the way that they're happening as well. So now on to week 7. So a couple of games that I thought were kind of interesting as far as games of the week, right? One is that Kansas City Tennessee game. I thought that was kind of interesting. I thought that Cincinnati Baltimore game was also going to be an interesting one. And then what about you, Jeremy? Any other games that stand out to you this week that you think are going to be interesting or have some interesting storylines that you would like to see?
Well, I also saw some of the same games you saw, and maybe I'll add to that the Eagles and the Raiders. So
Yeah.
you might not think that's going to be a good game, but the Eagles are always an intriguing team, especially when it comes to you, because you do not like Jalen Hurts as an NFL quarterback. And I think that's fun. And one more, this might be one of those like futility bowl type games, but the Falcons and the Dolphins, that game is probably going to be closer than you think, because there are 2 teams who maybe just aren't that good, but when you put them together, it's going to be a close game. But if there is there another really good game? Maybe the Colts and the 49ers would be another one that actually could turn out to be a good game. Depends on who's playing for the 49ers. I'm not sure who's going to be starting at quarterback for the 49ers, but the Colts
Yeah.
are always looking to get wins and come back from their rough start and try to get back closer to 500. This would be a great opportunity for them to get another game on Tennessee, considering who
Yeah.
Tennessee is playing.
Yeah, it would be an interesting one to kind of think about. I think a couple other games that I thought were interesting, so we can just kind of like quickly go through some of these things. Denver versus Cleveland, like that's one that both teams showed really strongly at the beginning of the season. Now they're just kind of skimming along and not showing that they're that next level. So both of them have a little bit of something to prove. The Jets versus New England, that's one where it's kind of like what's going to happen? New England showed that they almost beat the Cowboys. The Jets had Zach Wilson, but he hasn't really shown too much. So Washington, Green
That
Bay. Green
game
Bay's
is
been
only
pretty
interesting in 2009 when Rex Ryan was the coach. The game is
solid.
not interesting anymore.
Yeah, Washington, Green Bay, right? Like Aaron Rodgers is going to have to come down sometime, maybe, probably not. But is Washington defense going to ever show up? That's one of those things. Atlanta versus Miami. One thing to look out for that one is does the remote change the channel? The other games that I thought was Detroit versus the Rams. You have Stafford coming back to Detroit, and you have Goff basically, or Goff coming back to LA and Stafford playing against his old team. So that should be fun to watch. I know that's going to be a fun game, energy wise, because Stafford's going to try to make those dudes look silly. Like he's like, you're like, yeah, I already know exactly what he's going to do.
I don't think Stafford's going to care because the verdict is already in. The Rams are much better. Stafford is in a better position.
He's going to care.
And the Rams, the Lions would not be 0-6 with Matt Stafford. I think everyone can agree. Even the coach was like, hey, man, Jared Goff got to do better. He got to do something. So when Jared Goff is getting called out 6 games into the season, there's something going on there. So I think the verdict is already in. I think we already know who won that.
Oh, I just think it's going to be a fun game to watch because Stafford is a joker. He likes to mess with people. He kind of reminds me of like that Phillip Rivers of his time. You know what I mean? With how he messes with people or how he jokes around. I think that he's going to try to like just talk Phillip crap Rivers. To a bunch of the
I bet nobody actually liked Phillip Rivers. I've never heard anybody come out and say how much they like Phillip Rivers. Not once.
He's one of those guys, if you like hang around with him, like he's going to get on your nerves, but you're also going to like hanging around with him because he's a funny guy. But you're just like, man, he is
like Kawhi.
You said Kawhi? Oh.
Yeah.
See, Kawhi is more chill funny. Phillip Rivers is in your face, like funny.
But Kawhi's a fun guy.
A fun guy. All right. You got good jokes. The other ones that I think so Houston, Arizona, don't think that would be anything worth watching. Chicago versus Buccaneers. Again, I don't really see too much in that one. New Orleans, Seattle, maybe a year ago or so. Maybe that would have been interesting.
I'm really disappointed in New Orleans, man. I am so disappointed in the Saints so far. They're still 3-2. They still have a chance to make some noise. They still have a chance to right the ship. They're not completely lost. I'm just disappointed in how they've looked. Their offense has not looked good at all. The numbers aren't there. Like, their defense has been playing pretty well. But as a team, I thought I was going to be a lot more excited about them. A lot more excited that Jameis Winston finally has a starting job again. But it's just not happening for me this year with the Saints.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's one of the things to just keep in mind with them is that it just doesn't look as good. So we'll see what happens to them overall, but yeah, not necessarily sure.
Odell Beckham Jr. is active for tonight's game versus Denver. That's going to be something because a lot of people think that Baker Mayfield force feeds Odell Beckham. They think that kind of messed up his rhythm, and now we have Baker Mayfield out and Odell Beckham in. So will Odell Beckham look better with a different quarterback? Case Keenum, right? Is it Case Keenum? Yeah. And Case Keenum is everyone's favorite backup for like 2 weeks, and then they realize that maybe he's just a backup. But he's going to get everybody excited, and they know Case Keenum can deliver until he just doesn't.
Yeah. So I think that that one, Odell Beckham, I don't know. I'm not really too Yeah, he played last game too, right? So
I don't know. Like I said, hardly saw anything.
yeah, he played last game, I think a little bit, and maybe the one before that. But he's definitely one of those guys. So let's quickly go over because I guess that something got switched around. But let's quickly go over the games of the week, right? So the first game of the week, this Kansas City Tennessee game. What are your thoughts about that game, by the way?
I think that Kansas City is a better team. Again, like I said, Kansas City is either sleepwalking or just lazy so far. And you ever notice that when you look at Patrick Mahomes in commercials, he looks like he's got a little gut going. Have you noticed that? He seems like
No,
he might be getting a little soft. And maybe he's always been soft and I just never noticed it. Well maybe Mahomes is a little soft now, you know what I'm saying? Maybe he's a little enjoying the commercials, eating a whole lot of ketchup. Maybe he's just letting himself go a little bit and they're getting a little bit too, high on the hog here. So I don't know, but that's something I noticed that I thought was kind of weird. An NFL quarterback at the top of his game, it looks like he's got a gut. So what I
okay.
think about the Chiefs is that the Chiefs love to do
Byron
certain things that
Leftwich.
I'm pretty sure is going to be a weakness of the Titans. Like they've played some really good games in the past, but can the Titans defend the deep ball like the Chiefs like to throw? I don't think so. And maybe they're going to be disciplined, but they were getting beat deep a lot versus Buffalo.
Yeah.
And I think the Chiefs can beat them deep. I think that's kind of one of their weaknesses the Tennessee Titans have is they can get beat over the top like that.
Mhm.
So I think the Chiefs are going to be licking their chops to be able to get at that defense and to just throw over the top. I think the Chiefs, one thing the Chiefs can do is stop the run. I think the Chiefs are like their defensive line is hyper aggressive. They get a lot of like procedural penalties offsides and stuff because they're so hyper aggressive.
Yeah.
Whereas like their secondary might not be as good, but the Titans aren't going to use the pass as much as they're going to use the run. So I think that the Chiefs probably have an advantage in both sides of the matchup because the things that they like to do on both sides are probably easily done against Tennessee. So that's what I think about that. I guess I won't make my pick right now, but I think you know where I'm heading.
Yeah, so I think, like I said, the Tennessee is really solid. I think that the running game helps out. I think that Kansas City has a really strong team, especially with the passing part. They Williams last week, I think he did a better job as being their lead running back than Clyde has been doing. So good for them with that one because they definitely need a little bit more consistency. And I think if they can get that consistency, then they can take their game to the next level. So we'll be interesting to see how they work against this Tennessee team, especially with how Tennessee has been beating some very solid teams one way or another. So, what about that Cincinnati Baltimore game? What are your thoughts with that one?
I think the Ravens are going to get another win. I think maybe I shouldn't have. I should have held back a little bit. I think that Cincinnati's been a solid team so far this year, better than most people thought. Especially with Jamar Chase just running wild, getting open anytime he wants, and Joe Burrow being able to just hit him whenever he needs to. But I think the Ravens just have something going right now on both sides of the ball. They're able to limit other teams. I mean, they limited the Chargers. Now, again, like I said, maybe that was a body clock game. It was 10 a.m. the Chargers body clock time, and you don't seem to believe that that's a thing, but it's a thing, man. Chargers were not awake for that game. Maybe either
Yeah.
way, they limited Justin Herbert. They limited Herbert. They brought a lot of pressure. They did very Baltimore Ravensy things, and they controlled the game. So I expect them to be able to do that. And I do think it'll be close because I think that the Bengals change their uptick is real.
Hmm.
And so I think that it'll be closer, but I think Baltimore can definitely win the game.
Yeah.
Also, I hope the Bengals are appreciating Marvin Lewis at this point because you have teams that get rid of their coaches for, hey, we're not winning enough, or Marvin Lewis never won a playoff game, but Marvin Lewis never had a team, right? He never had this much of an investment in his team, and he kept taking them to the playoffs. He had Andy Dalton as his quarterback, who was his best quarterback. Andy Dalton's not a bad quarterback, right?
Yeah.
But I think Joe Burrow is a better quarterback than Andy Dalton. Joe Burrow has a lot more moxie, a lot more confidence. He's got a lot more swagger than Andy Dalton ever had. I don't think you can confuse Andy Dalton with like a quarterback that plays outside of the system. So I don't know. I just feel like Bengals fans should appreciate Marvin Lewis for what he did because now Bengals are actually kind of good again, and it's taken a long time. And they were perennially playoff contenders at the very least under Marvin Lewis.
Yeah, and I think the other thing with Marvin Lewis, right? Like he dealt with a lot of issues. Burfict,
Yeah, perfect.
um, that he dealt with the AJ Green injuries, right? They had Chris, dang, what is his name? The wide
Henry,
receiver that, yeah, Chris Henry that passed
rest in
away,
peace.
So
Hmm.
they had a lot of different things that were going on in Cincinnati at different times. They even invested in Joe Mixon at an early age when they could have invested in other things, so I think that he definitely had a hard team and he kept them together for whatever it was. But hey, shout out to them for what they're doing right now. Getting Joe Burrow is definitely a big improvement. So cool.
Yeah, and I think the thing about Marvin Lewis was he took chances on people because he wanted to help people. I think
yeah,
he really did take a lot of chances to make people's lives better. So, that's another thing that's kind of underrated about what he did because it wasn't always about football, I don't think.
yeah, he definitely tried to invest in people and their actual life and who they were, and I think that was a really good thing for that team and what they actually needed. Maybe they didn't get the wins on the field, but they got the wins in life, and that's what matters.
Yeah.
I'll say, like I said, I think that game's going to be kind of interesting. Baltimore's been showing up, and if they can keep it up, then who knows how far they're going to go. It's an unconventional way to win sometimes, but they're an unconventional team. They have some unconventional type of players. Their running back group is 40 years plus. Their quarterback is amazing at throwing with a lot of strength, a lot of velocity, and getting into his guys. He has guys that can get open very deep, but maybe not the route runners that some people might think. So they're winning it their way, and as long as it works out, then hey, shout out to them. The next game, and I think we can just leave it at that for the games of the week. That Philly Raiders game. So, why did you think the Philly Raiders game was actually interesting? And then, what are your takes on this specific game?
I think any Raiders game right now is like must see TV because they're all kinds of drama. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what that team is going to be
Mhm.
after having lost their coach. Is it a breath of fresh air? Are they motivated to do better now? Who knows? And the
Yeah.
Eagles, like I said, you do not want to see Jalen Hurts as an NFL quarterback. So I find it interesting
I
to
mean,
watch him play to see how he develops. So
yeah, I mean,
I think
if
any game with the
good.
Ravens is going to be sorry, any game with the Raiders is going to be intriguing to me. And then when you add the Eagles to it, I think that's a nice little. You got a stew going, as Action Jackson would say. Carl Weathers, as Carl Weathers would say, you got a stew going. So that's it.
All right, cool. Got some stew. Somebody's eating.
You got a
I
stew
don't know
going.
who it is, but what was I gonna say? Yeah, I think this game's interesting. Jalen Hurts, he shines sometimes against certain types of teams, and it's interesting. He's not necessarily. I don't see he's a good quarterback, but he manages games well enough for his teams to compete in them. And that won't get you super far in the NFL, and that's why he needs to improve, right? Like your teams can compete, but if you can't make sure that you're pushing them to get that win, then that's always going to be one of those issues. Luckily, he has Smith there because Devontae Smith is eating people alive, and I think that's really good having a trusty target, and that's something that he's used to having when he was at Alabama, right? He was used to having that guy that he could actually go to, and then Oklahoma, you know what I mean? That's another thing that he's kind of used to. So with Jalen Hurts overall, not sure how he's going to produce. It's always kind of like an up and down type of thing. And they definitely need to make sure that they continue to get the running backs involved. With the Raiders, like we said, the Raiders have a chip on their shoulder, I guess. So I'm excited to see what the Raiders do for the rest of the season. I think they could actually show a little bit better than what we assume they might do. So, all right. Outside of that, let's go to the game. So let's go over all of the games and we'll go with our predictions. So let's start out with that first game. So Denver versus Cleveland. What are you thinking about this game? The one that's on currently. I haven't checked the score yet, but what do you think about the game that's on currently? Who
Oh,
are
it's
you
not
picking?
on yet. It'll be on in an hour.
Okay, an hour. Okay.
Um, yeah, I don't think Cleveland has enough players right now. They're out both of their starting running backs. They're out their starting quarterback. They probably have depth. We have the guy, what's his name, Demetric Felton, D
Mhm.
Felton. That's my brother. So we got him. He's pretty good, but I just don't think that they have their starters and starting caliber players that are enough to be able to win that game. So even though Denver has not looked good, they started off looking good, 3-0, but they haven't looked good recently. And I think that maybe they aren't as good as they looked, but I think they're going to be able to win this game tonight. So I'm going to go with Denver.
Cool. So let me see. I'm actually going to go with Cleveland. I do think Denver has a solid team. I went with them last week, and they didn't come out as solid as I anticipated. I don't think Cleveland's necessarily going to be that dominant, but I feel like with the injuries that they have, this is the time for their defense to step up. And I think that Myles Garrett, this is to you, man. I know you're watching this show. You're always watching. Make sure, I know your game's in an hour, but make sure you put some pressure on the quarterback, right? Make sure you put some pressure on Bridgewater. And I think that if they're able to get to Bridgewater, then that's definitely one of those situations that they can take advantage of. Denver's probably the better team in this game at this point with the injury issues, but I think Cleveland needs to prove something. So I'm going to go ahead and go with Cleveland for this one.
And Myles Garrett, write us a poem or something, man. I know you got skills like that. I know your pen game is nice. Write us something.
Yeah, he already looks like one of those old guys that talks about the league, right? Like, man, back when I used to play, man, I was stronger than everybody. I was faster than everybody. Well, you might be right now, but you need to do something. You need to show us something. So
he's like Uncle Drew. The game is, it always was about buckets.
Well, he needs to do something. I'll tell you that. What about this next game? Carolina versus the Giants. What are you thinking with that one?
Man, this one's a tie game waiting to happen. I'm gonna go with Carolina. I'm gonna go with the Panthers. I'm still not sure. I think what they put McCaffrey on IR, so McCaffrey is out for like 4 more weeks or something like that. But Chuba Hubbard's been playing pretty well, so that's okay. But Sam Darnold's been really turning the ball over, and we have on the other side, a quarterback who likes to turn the ball over. So hey, this game could be dicey. A lot of turnovers, a lot of short fields maybe. But I'm gonna go with the Panthers. They scored a decent amount of points last game, but it was again a lot of turnovers and not a very solid effort. I think they're better, so I'll go with the Panthers.
Okay, quick question. Leading rusher for the Giants. Go.
Daniel Jones.
Daniel Jones with 200 yards rushing. He has 200 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns compared to Chuba to Hubert, 280 yards on 1 touchdown. Daniel Jones did that with 33 carries, Hubbard with 72. So you guys let me know who the best running back is in this game. And I'll just play. But Daniel Jones does get it done on his feet. And I think if he plays with Kadarius Toney, those guys can be really good. So I think Sam Darnold's thing is just making sure that he limits his turnovers. And if he's able to do that, they should have a chance to win this game. They still have a strong defense. And Daniel Jones, as far as a passer, is up and down right now. But I think Toney actually helps out a lot. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants won this one. Dang, do I want to go with the Giants? I wrote down Carolina, but all right, cool. I'm just going to go ahead and switch that, and I'm just going to go ahead and go with the Giants for this one, even though I think Carolina might have a better team. What about this this Jets versus New England game?
All right, really quick. I'm a little wary of a quarterback who runs for more touchdowns than he throws for in the red zone. That to me shows that he's not quite comfortable with the pace of the game. So for Daniel Jones to be running for a lot of touchdowns, running for a lot of yards, that just shows me he's not quite comfortable. So that's always something that I look out for that makes me kind of wary.
Yeah, but these aren't goal line carries. He has two rushing touchdowns.
And I've seen his huge runs. I've seen him get those big runs on those read option plays and stuff. But I'm just saying, when you have a young quarterback, especially who like runs a lot around the goal line, that doesn't bode well for their future because it just shows that they're not quite used to that, and they maybe never get used to it in terms of the pace, the decision making around the goal line. Just saying, it's just a red flag for me.
Yeah, I feel like with them, the biggest thing is they don't have enough consistency from the running game in general. And I've always had an issue with, just like I don't like Jalen Hurts as a quarterback. I don't really like Saquon Barkley that much. I don't think that he's a big play guy, but he doesn't offer enough consistency to be a top running back in the league. his big plays are more far in between. He's not really that good of a inline runner. He tries to use his speed a little bit more, but guys are getting used to him trying to use his speed, and I think that that's one of the reasons why he's not as effective. He's still a really good pass catching running back out the backfield, and he's also injured. So we'll see what ends up happening to them. But I think I'll go ahead and go with the Giants for this one.
Sounds good.
So what about this Jets versus New England game?
I think these teams already played, right? We already saw New England get the best of the Jets. I think New England's just a little bit better. New England could have beaten Dallas. So, maybe New England has a lot of upside, whereas I don't think the Jets have that much upside. So I'm going to go with New England.
Okay, cool. Jeremy's going to go with New England. I'm also going to go with New England. They have a little bit more consistency. And like as you mentioned, they're playing in New England this time, and Belichick always gets those rookie quarterbacks. So I think that New England's going to get this win. What about the next game, Washington versus Green Bay? Who are you taking with that game?
I'm going to go with Green Bay. I think Green Bay they're hitting their groove, man. They're hitting their stride. So seems like they figured it out, and they're going to go on a nice little win streak here. I think Washington's going to be one of their latest casualties. So I'm going to go with Green Bay.
Yeah, and that's one of the things with Green Bay, Washington. I feel like it's always one of those games where you're just never quite sure of what's exactly going to happen. But I think Green Bay has been playing fairly strong, and Chase Young definitely has some motivation to try to get after Aaron Rodgers. But I think the Green Bay Packers have just been a little bit too strong this year so far. But this game does have upset on it, but I don't think that it's going to end up happening. So what about this next game, Atlanta versus Miami? I'll start out with that one. Yeah, if you can find a controller to switch the channel, I suggest doing that. Because Atlanta, I say Atlanta, one of the bright spots about Atlanta this year, I think, is Cordell Patterson. I think that what he's doing there, finally finding out how he can influence a game in a lot of different ways, right? I think that's
not one of as a wide receiver, things. Right?
As a he's basically a tailback in a sense, right? Like that's really what he is, I mean, and I think that he came in as a wide receiver. He didn't have the consistent hands. He wasn't always getting separation on regular routes, but he was able to run those deep routes. He had his return.
But that man ran back kicks like crazy too, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. His return, like he has those skills, and now he's put in a position where, speaking of getting him open in free space, especially playing that running back type of role. Now you get a situation where he has a lot more space to create and do the things that he's really good at doing. So shout out to Cordell Patterson. So for that reason, I'm going to still go with Miami. Come on, Miami. You got this. All right.
You going to go with Miami?
Yeah, I'll go with Miami because it's in Miami.
Miami.
Who are you going with this one, Jeremy?
I'm going to do this one for the A. That's what I'm doing it for. A. So I'm going with Atlanta.
Cool, awesome.
Going to Atlanta on this one.
Yeah.
I think that both teams are pretty bad. Like you said, this is probably a time to go to IKEA, Home Depot, whatever you got to do. If you need to start a nice project at home, DIY, go ahead and do it during this game. You'll feel better about yourself when you have that bookshelf made.
You know what? Like this game might actually be a little bit more interesting. It just depends on which Matt Ryan you get, right? Like both of them actually have some interesting wide receivers, right? Devontae Parker, big play, big guy. Jalen Waddle's catching every single thing. You know what I mean? They don't run the ball. So if you don't like running downs, you're perfect. If you just like to see passing plays, this is a game for you. From the Dolphins, right? And I think that that's one of the interesting things is that it could be a little bit more high scoring than we anticipate. So here's for Tao going over 400 yards passing this game.
Yeah, well, I'm probably gonna put together a bookshelf or something. So you do what you got to do. I'm gonna handle
I'll just watch a different game. But all right, Detroit versus the Rams. Who are you thinking about with this game?
This one shouldn't be that hard. If they're gonna try to make it up, like, hey, this is gonna be Matthew Stafford getting revenge against his team. That's what's gonna happen. He's gonna get revenge if you want to play it like that. I'd rather see Detroit get a win. I have a soft spot for Detroit. I lived in that area in general for a while. I know how hard it is to be a Lions fan, and it was never good. Anytime I was there, it was never good. So I want to see those guys win and at least have some happiness, but it's not coming this week. Rams will win.
Rams will win. All right. I also took the Rams in this game. I think the Rams are just a stronger team overall, and I think they have the advantage of everything. So let's jump ahead to the next game. Houston versus Arizona. So Houston versus Arizona. This is another one where Arizona kind of has a little bit of everything, and Houston has some pieces of some stuff. So I'm just gonna go with Arizona for this one. What's your thoughts on this
You
game?
know, yeah, I think Arizona wins, and I think Arizona needs to start thinking about should they start resting Kyler Murray for the playoffs? Do you want him to get injured? He's fragile. He got hurt at the end of last year. He had a shoulder injury. He's fully healthy. You see what they can do. Should they start resting him when they get to like 8-0? Should they ramp it down a little bit? Maybe try to go 12-5 or something. Keep the number one seed, but don't get too much wear and tear on Kyler Murray, man. You know
No,
what I'm
he's
saying? He's kind
okay.
of
Just keep
slight.
him away from the big hits. Just tell him to make sure that when he's out there playing, oh, and you can't really do that because you want him to still play the same way and keep that energy up.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So you
yeah,
gotta
I don't know,
you gotta
man.
limit
It's
his
a tough
playing
one.
time. Just
Yeah,
play him in
that's
the
a
second
tough
half
one.
or first half and rest him or something.
But that also affects everybody else on the team and their flows and how long the line is blocking and who they're blocking for. And that
Yeah.
can make other injuries happen or wide receivers getting frustrated because, it's I think you just got to keep being aggressive right now and hopefully stay away from those injuries. So we're both going to Arizona for that one. And then what about the Chicago versus Bucks game?
Yeah, Tampa Bay wins. Again, Chicago not gonna do very much against Tampa. Justin Fields has been sacked more than any quarterback just about. Well, he hasn't because he hasn't started enough games, but the fact that he got sacked what 9 times in that one game, he's already close to the league lead in sacks. He's gonna get hit a bunch. He's gonna not throw the ball. He's gonna hold on to the ball too long. He's gonna have a very bad game, and Tampa will win easily.
Yeah, I think going to Tampa on the road for Fields might be a little bit too much to ask for. There's a lot of pressure, especially going against Brady. I think that could be one thing that holds him down. So I think I'm going to go ahead and go with Tampa Bay. Also, Fields does have ability to showcase some things, and maybe they might be able to compete, but he has to have a really good game for them to show up. What about this next game, this Colts versus 49ers game? What are you thinking with that one?
This one, this one's going to be a fun game to watch, I think. I don't know the 49ers quarterback situation right now, and that's really what's held them back, I think. They've had a lot of injuries, but if they get their quarterback situation figured out, they can be a really good team. They're just not there yet, even though they're supposed to win the Super Bowl. I'm going to go with the Colts because I think the Colts have shown something in the last few weeks. I think maybe Carson Wentz's ankles are better. I don't know, but they've been playing pretty well. They lost a close one to Baltimore. They won last week easily, so they're putting up points. They're maybe starting to play defense a little bit. So, I have to say, as much as I don't like talking about the Colts every single day, every single week, hey, I think they can win this week, so I'll give you that. I'm going with the Colts.
Yeah, and honestly, it's weird. Like the Colts have actually had some really good matchups so far at the beginning of the season, right? And I think that that's one of the reasons why outside of me being a fan, is why we talk about them, right? They were Monday night last week. They were Sunday night this week. They played against the Ravens. They played against the Rams. So they're playing against some of these top teams, and they've actually played better than a lot of them as well. So I think that that's one of the things to kind of keep in mind. Is that they have played against those top teams, the Texans as well. So for them, they just need that a little bit more consistency. And I'm worried about this pass rush by the 49ers. How does that affect Carson Wentz? Carson Wentz is the best when he has a lot of time to throw, and if he doesn't have that time to throw, then that's going to be something to that could be an issue, right? Like last week, Carson Wentz had 2 big pass plays. And if he took off both of those 2 pass plays, he would basically be less than 500% or 50% passing and around like 113 yards of passing yardage, right? So his game management was better. He got a couple of big plays that were in there and it made it look very good, but you have to also give credit to the wide receivers and what they did with getting open, getting deep. I think one time Carson Wentz almost underthrew somebody for a touchdown because he was hesitant, but everybody's like, wow, look at that pass. Look at it. It's so amazing. I'm like, like it was this far away from being underthrown, So again, I feel like he still has a lot of stuff to work on. But I think Indy has a better team for this game. And I think they have more to show. I do like that point that you're talking about with 49ers and their quarterback. I think Trey Lance should start when you're talking about the future and talking about the potential. Garoppolo has we know where he's going to be at. I feel like Trey Lance's potential is miles above Garoppolo's, and he just needs to get that exposure. He's a quick learner, and I think that if you allow him to play these games now, then he'll learn. And then by the time that the playoffs come around, if he's still starting, right, then they might have a chance to do a little bit more and go a little bit further. So, we'll see what happens with the quarterback situation. The next game, New Orleans versus Seattle. Who are you taking in that game?
Ooh, let me see who I took in that game because that one requires a lot of thought that I can't process right now. Let me see. Seattle again. Seattle's on their backup quarterback. So as much as I like to see Geno Smith succeed, and I think that New Orleans is going to be a little bit better. I think even though they've struggled a little bit, their offense isn't exactly as sharp as we wanted it to be. I think they can still pull this game out. And this is at New Orleans, right?
Mm-hmm. All right, Seattle.
It's at Seattle. Oh man, that's going to make it more complicated. But I'll go with New Orleans. They'll probably win by 2.
So yeah, I'm going with Seattle on this one. I think that Geno Smith's time to shine is now. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with Geno. All right, so let's get to the games of the weeks, and then we'll get done within the next 5 minutes or so. So this Kansas City Tennessee game. Who do you think is going to win this one? I know we just talked about it, and you kind of gave your hints. So who do you think is going to win this game?
Yeah, I laid out my argument. I think it's going to be a fairly high-scoring game, but I think that Kansas City can just go over the top. They can score a bunch of points. I think they can key up and stop the run. So I'm going to go with Kansas City.
Jeremy's going to go with Kansas City. I also wanted to go with Kansas City. I'm thinking Tennessee maybe because Derrick Henry, that rushing attack, and they're playing in Tennessee. It is an early game, which I think kind of favors the Chiefs a little bit more. So let me see. We have 3 games that are the same, or 4. So all right, cool. I'll switch it up. I'll go with Tennessee this one, just to make sure that we break a tie. Actually, if depending on what you go with, who do you have for Cincinnati, Baltimore?
You tell me who you got. All right.
So that game, I put Cincinnati, and I think that you were going to go with Baltimore for that one.
No, why do you go with Cincinnati?
Why am I going with Cincinnati? I think that they just have a solid team throughout. Like I said, Joe Burrow coming back for that second week, having those wide receivers that are out there. Samaje Perine also doing a really solid job as well out of the backfield, being their running back. And, Baltimore, they're kind of inconsistent at certain times, and this being a divisional game, I think that that's one of the reasons why Baltimore could have this upset at home for this in this specific game. So.
Okay. Yeah, I did go with Baltimore. I will go with Baltimore. I think Baltimore is just hot right now, man. I think they're just figuring things out and clicking on maybe not all cylinders, but if they're like a V8, they're clicking on 7 cylinders. I don't know. They're getting there. So I'm happy to see that in the midst of all the injuries that they're still able to pull things off. So yeah, I'm going to go with Baltimore.
And I'll say that about Baltimore. This last week was the first week where they had a pretty solid, convincing team win. But I think that I still need to see Lamar Jackson, even though they're winning 34-6, he does need to be throwing 2-3 interceptions, and he needs to do a little bit more from that quarterback position outside of the running. Not necessarily just in general, but now when you're playing against another division team, it just gets that much more challenging. So what about this Philly-Las Vegas game? Who are you going? I will say that for me, I'm going to go ahead and go with Las Vegas for this one. And this game is in Las Vegas. So who are you thinking for this game?
Yeah, I'm on the other side on that one. I'm going to go with Philly. Okay. I just feel like, hey, Philly again. They may not be better, but at least they're united. At least they're a team, and we still don't know what to expect from the Raiders. So I'm going to go with the continuity. I use that a lot in my picks, but I'm going to go with that for Philly.
Cool. So with that, since you're going to go Philly, I don't need to go Tennessee to break the tie. I'm going to go ahead and go with Kansas City.
Dude, I was saying pick with your heart, man. If your heart tells you Kansas City, go with Kansas City.
Man, I don't want to be tied up with you. I think it's a better show if we have a difference in records. So
nobody cares. They just want the real. They want that real.
Janice, how's it going, by the way?
They want that
Kansas
real,
City,
like
Cincinnati,
like Tamara.
Vegas is what Janice said, by the way.
What'd she say?
Kansas City, Cincinnati, Vegas.
All right, so she says Kansas City. See, because
So
she
she's the
believes in
same ones
Kansas
as
City.
me. Well, I think
Yeah.
the Tennessee, Kansas City could go either way. It just kind of depends on who the highlights are, And like I said, I think that Tennessee has a strong team, man. Like, don't count Tennessee out. Forget it. Actually, I'll go with Tennessee, man. I'm just gonna.
All right, go
Tennessee
Tennessee.
wants us to
Good.
have a tie
Good. Just
records,
believe in
and I
it.
hate tie records.
Believe in it, man. Just believe in it.
This
And
is
another thing
both
is,
a
I
show and a.
bet
Go
I
ahead.
bet you Derrick Henry runs for 150 yards too. Watch him just blow up.
You trying to change your pick now?
I ain't changing my pick. I make the picks. I make the picks and I stick with my picks. I ain't no waffle. I ain't no flip flopper. You know what I'm saying? I say what I want. I mean it.
Look like you about to be flip flopping from one side of the bed to the other. You about to get some good rest. It looks like, but anyways.
I don't sleep well on the road, man. I don't sleep well. I haven't slept well in a week. It's crazy.
With that said, I gotta go, Jeremy.
All right, man.
But anyways, thank you guys for checking out the show. It should be a good week of football. Make sure that you guys check out that Cleveland-Denver game. And outside of that, anything to add before we get out of here, Jeremy?
Nah, you got to go. So thanks for listening. Again, rate us on iTunes and all that stuff. Also, shout out to Bob, who designed our logo. Bob Xiong, isn't it? So we'll have to put his information up. But he designed our new logo. You've seen it on Facebook. Hopefully, any other place that our podcast is. Shout out to Bob for doing that. Hopefully, there's more changes to come. We're working on things. So just keep following us. Keep listening.
Yeah. And thank you guys again. This is Beyond Sports with Paul and Jeremy. I'm Paul.
I'm Jeremy.
All right. See you guys next week.
Peace. See ya.